to lesson 5, where I'm going to sort of show you an approach to using this 3-2 pattern and to be able to identify the key of a song in 10 seconds. And I'm sure when you see these sorts of videos, you go, sure, it's not going to be 10 seconds, it's going to be actually 15 seconds. And I guarantee, and I'm going to show you some examples right at the beginning, where I can find the key of a song, and in every case, it's under 10 seconds, and it's really quick and really simple. You just have to learn a few principles and so on. Before you go on to lesson 5, if you haven't looked at the first 4 lessons, please do, because it'll really help you understand the whole process. So let's get started, and I'll just show you some examples of how I find the key really quickly using this 3-2 pattern. And I'm not trying to show you how to do any fancy soloing in this case. It's just literally showing you how to do it in under 10 seconds, and sometimes actually under 7 or even close to 6 seconds. And then after that, what I'll do is go into some of the theory. Now, you don't really have to understand all that theory, but I think it's important to show that this makes sort of sense. And then at the end, I'll show you a number of examples of how I do it. And what I'm hoping that you'll do is, once I've done this, you'll just practice this approach. It's actually really quite simple. It's really fast, and it really makes the whole process of identifying the key of a song much easier than anything I've actually seen on the web before. So hopefully you'll enjoy it, and thanks for listening. So that's the key that it is in. Took probably 6-7 seconds. Let's try another one. So that's the key right there. That's the key. This is the key. Right here. This is the key here. Let's try this one. Now there's some theory, and then I'm going to show you some practice with this, but really knowing the theory, it really does help, but you can do this without even knowing the names of the notes. But I thought it was important to at least show you that there's a method to my madness, and at the end I'll show you an approach that doesn't require you to know theory or the notes, but you just have to be able to understand that 3-2 pattern. So as we talked about on previous lessons, the pentatonic notes follow this 3-2 pattern on all strings, and the notes are the same for any scale in its relative minor. Now, in that 3-2 pattern, there is only one run of 3 notes. In the major pentatonic, it's root, 2, and 3. And in the minor pentatonic, it's flat 3, 4, and 5. So there is only one run of 3 notes in any pentatonic scale. So there are 2 1/4 finger stretches shown in the red and the green. This green one is the classic pentatonic scale position 1, and it includes either the root of the major chord on the first note of that 3 pattern, or a root note of the relative minor pentatonic on the second note of that 2 pattern. And your job when you're trying to identify the key of a song is to find the gold. And that gold part I'm talking about is finding that green 1/4 finger stretch, which includes both the root of the major and or the minor pentatonic. And if you look at this, you can see that the root of the major pentatonic is simply the flat 3rd of the minor pentatonic, or conversely, the root of the relative minor pentatonic is the sixth of the major pentatonic. Now I know this all seems like a lot of theory. Again, I just want to show you how this all works, and then I'm going to show you a very simple way to do it afterwards. So these are all the major pentatonic scales in their relative minors. And here I've just laid out the first string of a guitar, and you can see it goes E, F, F sharp, G, all the way up to E again on the 12th fret. And so what I'm going to do is show you the notes for all of the pentatonic scales and put them in order. So you can see here, these are the 5 notes that are part of the pentatonic scale for either A minor or C. For E minor and G, there's one note difference when you compare the A minor / C pentatonic versus the E minor / G pentatonic. For the B minor D pentatonic, again, 5 notes, and the B minor D is one note different than the E minor G. And this goes all the way down to all of the different pentatonic scales. And you can see that there's a consistent pattern throughout. And because of that consistent pattern, it makes it quite simple to figure out the key of a particular song. And if you look closely, there's the 3-part of that 3/2 pattern that we've spent a lot of time going over. And there's the 2-part. And our job is to try to find that gold part of the pentatonic scale. And in this case, it's, as mentioned in the previous slide, it's always in between the major root and the minor root. And if you can find that, then you know exactly what key you're in. So let's sort of go over the approach and how you can think about it. Some cool, just useful or interesting pieces of information, I guess, if you will. I went to Spotify and they've actually looked at what percentage of songs are certain keys. And you can see 58% of songs fall somewhere in that green zone. 35% of songs fall in that yellow zone, and about 7% of songs fall in that gray zone. Now, as I mentioned before, there's some really useful patterns that you can see. So if you look at those green pentatonic scales, all of them have in common is E is in every one of those pentatonic scales. If you look at that yellow box, for those pentatonic scales, F is in all of those pentatonic scales. And then the last two, the gray zone, the F sharp is in all of those pentatonic scales. So to quickly identify whether you're in the green zone, the gray zone, or the yellow zone is to just listen to the note. Just play an E, and if an E sounds right, the key of the song is one of those 5 pentatonic scales. If the F sounds right, then it's one of those 5 pentatonic scales in the yellow, and so on. So once you've identified that, and that's pretty quick when you're listening to a song, you can also see that once you've identified one of the notes, the next note up on the guitar string is never part of the pentatonic scale. You see it's a complete blank, whether you're talking about the green, the gray, or the yellow. Now, with the green pentatonics, you can see 3 of them have the next note in them as being 2 notes above the E, so F sharp. And the same thing applies to the yellow. 3 of them, the next note in the pentatonic scale is 2 above the F, or it's a G note. And the same thing applies to the gray zone. And then the other 2, for instance, in the green zone, so the A minor and the C and the E minor and the G, the note is not 2 up, it's now 3 up, or it's a 1/4 stretch. And as always, the same thing applies to these 2 pentatonic scales out of the yellow zone. It's a 1/4 stretch instead of a 1/3, if you will. And with the other group that had part of that 2 pattern that we've talked about, the next note is going to be a 1/4 stretch. And the same thing applies to the yellow zone. It's an identical thing, except it's all just shifted up. Instead of being right under the E note, it's all under the F note. So now, as you can see, this 1/4 place on the A minor C pentatonic is the wrong 1/4. It's one of the 1/4s, but it's the wrong one. The correct one is simply 5 frets higher, or you skip 1 note, sort of that G sharp in between, and move the 1/4 up to the A and the C. So that's the classic position 1 of the pentatonic scale. And if you're in that gold zone, you know that you are in the A minor / C pentatonic scale. With the E minor and G, the gold area is between the E and the G, whereas the wrong one, if you will, is up by the B and the D. And this applies to all of the different pentatonic scales. For instance, the B minor D, you can see that 1/4 stretch there is the wrong one, and the right one is up, again, another 5 frets, or 1 space, or simply moving your 1/4 up 1 space. So again, you can see there's a lot of symmetry here, and what our whole goal is to find that place between the major root and the minor root, and that's the gold zone, and that tells you the key of the song that you're in. So that's sort of the theory. So now what I want to do is kind of show you how to do this simply without understanding all that theory, if you will. So the whole process is to find the gold, that correct 1/4 space. And so I'm going to show you a bunch of examples at the end and show you and give you some practice on how to do this. But the first thing you want to do, as I mentioned before, is find out which note sounds the best. So I always start with the E, and if that sounds right, then I know I have to be in, the key has to be in one of those green pentatonic scales. If it's the F sounds better, then I know that the key is in one of those yellow pentatonic scales. And then if neither of those sound any good, it has to be the F sharp. And then once you've got that best note, you know the next note is not in there. The next note directly above that note is not there. So once you've identified this best note, again, it doesn't matter if you know the name of the note. You could just try the open string and then the first fret and then the second fret, and whichever one sounds best to you, it's the best note. So what you do is then, that's very quick to figure out. And so what you do is then you start on the best note. You know the next note directly next to the best note cannot be part of the pentatonic scale. So you just do a sort of a 1/3 and see if it sounds good. So if that 1/3 sounds good, then what you're looking for is that 1/4. So the next thing you give a try to, you've shown that the 1/3 sounds good, you try the 1/4 and see if that sounds good. And if it sounds good, it eliminates another bunch of pentatonic scales. And then if that sounds good, you shift it all up to a higher 1/4. And if that sounds good, that is your key. However, if that higher 1/4 doesn't sound good, then the original 1/4 you were on is very likely the key of the song. Now, if the 1/3 sounds good originally, and then you go to that 1/4 and it doesn't sound good, it may be that you're on that 3 part of that 3/2 pattern. And if they all sound good, then what that means is that best note is the root of the major scale. And so you just shift down, and then you have that pentatonic scale position 1. Now, if initially when you try that 1/3 and it doesn't sound good, the only other option is it has to be a 1/4. And then if you find that a 1/4 sounds good, then you do exactly what we just did on the part 2, where you try the higher 1/4, and if it sounds good, that has to be the key of the song. If it doesn't sound good, then the original 1/4 that you're in was the key of the song. And here's some useful things to think about. This is just an example of when we're talking about how these 1/4s are important. So if you look at an example of, say, the C and A minor pentatonic scale, the notes that are in there are C, D, E, G, and A. So if you go to the lower 1/4, that's the E minor or G pentatonic, and you can see the only difference is one note. There's a B in that pentatonic, but in the A minor C, there's a C. And you can see that the A minor C pentatonic has A, E, G, and C in it. And the E minor and G has at least 3 of those notes, the D, G, and the E. And the B will also sound good because it's also in the key of C. It just doesn't have to be part of the pentatonic scale of C or A minor. And then if you go up to a higher 1/4, now you're in the D minor F pentatonic. And the only difference between those two pentatonics now is there's an E versus an F. And so the same thing is, you've got at least 3 similar notes, D, A, and C. And the F, it won't sound quite right from a pentatonic, but it is one of the notes in the key of C, although it's not part of the pentatonic system. So the reason I'm putting that out is that to let you know that there is just one note difference between these 1/4s when you're looking at the A minor / C versus E minor and G, or the A minor and C versus D minor and F. So one of the ways to think about it, if you are in the key of C or an A minor pentatonic, is that that's the 1 chord. That's the 4 chord, because as you go up the fretboard to higher notes, that's sort of the circle of fourths. And the E minor G would be the 5th chord. So as you go lower on the fretboard, that's changing it by a 5th. So that's the direction of the circle of fifths. So let's now do some examples. So what I want to do is show you how I can quickly find the key of any song really, really quickly. Now this is going to take longer than the 10 seconds that I showed you at the beginning of the video, but I want to sort of explain the thought pattern and the process, and it's pretty simple. So the very first thing that you want to do is find what I call the best note, and it's either going to be an E, an open string, it's going to be an F, or an F sharp. The most likely one is E, because that note is in more pentatonics when you're just listening to basic songs. So I try one of those to find the best note. So in this case, what I would do is I just play an E. And that sounds about right. It sounds like it fits into this song. So I know that E note is going to be part of the pentatonic scale. So I know I've got an E note that I can play. I know the next note cannot be an F, because all pentatonics have at least a space in between them. So I'm not going to try that next note, but it could be here. So it could be a 1/3 stretch, if you will. So it could be here. That sounds out. So I'm not going to use that note. So I know it's not a 1/3. So the next note has to be a 1/4. So I play this one. So those both sound good. So that's a 1/4 stretch, if you will. And if you follow the process that I'm talking about, I have to find the right 1/4. And there's only 2 1/4s in a pentatonic, and I know this has to be one of them. See, I keep playing this and it sounds good. But now what I want to do is go up to the next 1/4 that would be in this potential pentatonic, and that means going up 5 frets, or just skipping this 1. Instead of having the 1/4 here, I go up to here. And if that 1/4 sounds good, then that's the key of the song. So if I'm playing in here, it sounds good, right? So I know it has to be here, and that's either a C or an A minor. In this case, it's probably likely an A minor. But that doesn't really matter whether it's a C or an A minor, because it's the same area where you can play. So that's how I find it really quickly. I found the best note. In this case, it was an E. I found out whether the next step was a 2, which it wasn't, or a 3. So I know that 1/4 is part of the pentatonic scale. So then I slide up to the next one, and if that sounds good, that's where it is. So let's try another one. Play the best note. I gotta try and find that, and again, it sounds like an E, so it sounds like it works pretty good. So I know it can't be, the next one can't be an F. What about 2 up? That sounds pretty good. So the next thing it can only be is, it could be up here, but I probably would try the 1/4 to see if that fits. That does sound good. It sounds like it fits right. So now I have to know, is that the right 1/4? And the way I do that is just shift it up all the way up to here. That sounds pretty good. So now I know that's where I play the song. That's where the pentatonic scale is, and the key of the song, it's either a B minor or a D. Let's try another one. So again, I find the best note. fit? Yeah, it sounds like I think that F fits better. Let's see, the next note would be. Yeah, that's pretty good. So then probably the next one would be a 1/4. It has to be 1/4. That sounds pretty good. So I have to find out if it's the right 1/4. I go up to here. That sounds good too. So that's where the key is, right there. So it's either an E flat or a C minor. Pretty simple. So find the best note. Sounds better, I think, than that one. That sounds pretty good. And I go to a 1/4. That sounds pretty good, yeah. So it could be there. So let's go up to one more. Doesn't sound quite as good. So I just probably go down here. Yeah. That's the key. So it's a G minor or a, what would that be? An A sharp. Let's try another one. Let's try this one. So find the best note. That's probably an E. That sounds good. Let's go to the 1/4. Sounds good. Go up one more. That doesn't sound quite as good. So I'm pretty sure it's down here. So it's in the key of A or F sharp minor. You can check it if you want to by going, if you got the 1/4 here, the 3/2 pattern. This has to be, these three notes all have to be in it. So those should all sound good. That should be the first, second, and the third. Okay, so let's try this one. Find the best note. That sounds pretty good. Not too bad, but a little bit higher. That sounds good. So I've got the 1/4 here and here. So I go up one higher to see if that fits. That sounds out. It doesn't sound right. So it's got to be here. So it's got to be an E minor or a G. That's what it is. So this was easy to figure out. I got the E. Find this note. I find that that doesn't sound good, but this does. So there it is. So let's try this one. Too bad. No. Yeah, that definitely sounds good. So there's the 1/4. So I get to go to the next 1/4 to see if that sounds good. Yeah, and so it's definitely in the key of C or A minor. And now, because I showed you earlier on, how the 1/4s relate to each other. So this still sounds. I can use those notes, and it sounds pretty good, but one or two of those notes will be a little bit out because there's one note different. But this sounds good. If I go up here, it might sound right. But sometimes if you're not sure if you're in the right spot, because sometimes it's a little tricky. If you stay in this one, and you just try one up or one down, and see if they sound better. But typically, if you found the correct one, it's usually the right one. In this case, it's. Let's try this one. Sounds not too bad. Yeah, sounds pretty good. sound good. So that's my 3 in a row. So when I've got 3 in a row like that, with a space between them, but E and the F sharp and then the G sharp, that means I have to go down here. That's where the 1/4 is. That's the 3 part of the pentatonic scale. So I know it has to be here and further down, but I can't play that down there, so I play it up here. So now I know that this is a song that's in the key of probably C sharp or E. So say C sharp minor or an E. And like I say, it doesn't matter if you know the notes. You can just do it by what strings work. Once you get practiced at doing this, it gets a lot easier once you practice it a lot, and it becomes almost second nature when you're doing it. Once you're doing it a few times. Okay, so let's try this one. So I try and find the best note. Sounds okay. Let's see. Let's see, it's a little out. That's better. So I go 2 up because I know it can't be this one. I go to here, and I could either go 2 up again. Sounds pretty good. Sounds a little off, so I think it's here. So I know I've got these 3 notes in a row. So that's the 1, 2, and 3, or the 3 notes in a row on the pentatonic scale in that 3/2 pattern. So if that's the case, this has to be what I'm going to be starting on. So it's down here. So I know the key is there. It's either F sharp or D minor. So it's really simple. I can really find almost any key of any song in under 10 seconds. Obviously it takes longer because I'm showing you how to do it this way. But once you get good at it, it's really fast, and it's not completely foolproof because it takes you have to practice your ear a little bit, but it's pretty good and fast. Okay, so get a little bit faster here. That doesn't sound right. That sounds good. That sounds good. Sounds good. That's a 1/4. So it could either be this one or go up one more. That sounds good. So it's got to be that. So it has to be. Key. Found it in just a few seconds. Okay, so let's try this one. That doesn't sound very good. That doesn't sound very good either. So it has to be this F sharp. So it's a 1/3. So I go up here. That I'm looking for. So I go to the next one. It's not quite as good. I think it's probably no, so it's either a B major or G sharp minor. That's how I found the key for that one. Using the F sharp as the best note. So what I tried to do with this lesson is help you use that 3/2 pattern that we've talked about over the last number of lessons, and showed you how there are runs of 3 notes in any pentatonic scale. There are 2 1/4 finger stretches, and once you can figure out where those are, you can very, very quickly, in under 10 seconds, if you practice this, you can find the key of any song. And it really is relatively foolproof if you do it properly, and you'll also get a lot of appreciation of where all the notes are, where the pentatonic scales are, and how all that fits together. So hopefully you found it useful. So thanks for listening.